Welcome to NewsNation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
The 34-year-old Democratic Socialist is the winner, as expected, and will be the next mayor here in New York City. Numbers coming in early. The check mark is next to Mamdani, and he ran a campaign after, winning in a crowded Democratic primary field that was impressive to many, driven by the youth vote here in New York City. On the left side of the Democratic Party, without a doubt, as you look at his campaign headquarters, and now Mamdani, just turning 34 years of age, will be the next mayor in the largest city in the country. Those are some early figures coming in, bottom of the screen, 51.7%, with Andrew Cuomo at just under 40% and Curtis Sliwa at 8%. Again, early numbers, but the projection, given the data that we had, was more than enough to make this decision early in the night.
And these numbers are interesting because if they hold true is this breakdown? We just are projecting him to win the race.
That's right.
These are
This
just
is
based on nothing.
But no, New York gives a big dump right after you get all the early votes.
You already have almost 750,000.
That's probably most of the early vote.
Yeah.
New York City, the Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani winning the race for mayor, topping the former governor Andrew Cuomo and the Republican Curtis Sliwa. Mamdani getting over that 50% threshold. For all the talk about if this one drops out or if that one drops out and someone can coalesce, wouldn't have mattered. Mamdani unbeatable there in New York City. Our Alicia Nieves starts us off this morning in Manhattan as the sun is up. Folks getting the coffee and the bagels there in the big city, and there is going to be a new mayor come next year, Alicia.
Yeah, good morning, Blake. A lot of excitement, particularly among young voters who helped lead the charge and lead this victory for Zohran Mamdani. But there is some concern in the Big Apple over this win, as it's now putting us inside of some unprecedented territory. This was a historic win for many reasons. For one, the voter turnout. You're talking 2 million or just over 2 million people turned out to vote here in New York City. That's the first time we've seen that happen in the New York mayoral race in about 60 years. Mamdani also making history as the city's first Muslim mayor and youngest leader in a generation, or at least one generation or more. The win further putting this proclaimed Democratic Socialist in the spotlight, giving his brand of politics more national attention. Mamdani, of course, ran against independent former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Republican Curtis Sliwa. During his victory speech last night, he acknowledged them as he thanked his supporters who delivered more votes for him than both those two competitors combined.
For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. The future is in our hands. My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
Yes, there's some concern in the city over what this means in terms of Mamdani's policy moving forward. He is likely to implement more progressive policies in office. Those policies very clearly have put him in the crosshairs of President Donald Trump. Actually, before Election Day, President Trump threatened to withhold federal dollars here in New York City if Mamdani won, also suggesting that he would run the city. Unclear what that means or what that would look like. But we know that Mamdani took some time yesterday in his victory speech to directly address President Trump, saying, quote, "Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn up the volume." This is a loud win here in New York City, but it's a loud win across the country, as this again potentially means what the 2026 Democratic race, or just more broadly midterm elections, could look like, Blake.
Should we just take his word now? Different time, different position. Let's ask the man who just stepped down as NYPD Chief of Department, John Chell. Now, very important, Chief. Good to see you.
Yep.
Thank you for your service. Did not retire because of the election. You were going to retire anyway.
Yes, I was leaving anyway.
Just to keep you clean on that. So, here, you just said what you want to hear. All good.
Well, I'm a firm believer that your DNA is your DNA. You are who you are. So congratulations to him last night. Great campaign. You ran a great campaign. But now the speech last night kind of switched gears on us, a different person. So that's why I say your DNA is your DNA. Now let's get to the rhetoric. You just showed what he said about the police department. He apologized for that, but we're not wicked and corrupt amongst other things. He aligned himself with the Democratic Socialists of America. Their platform is real real out there, basically as public safety. Do away with prisons and the cops are bad. So he aligns with that. Now look at what he wants to do crime-wise. Oh, I didn't say I didn't want to do a misdemeanors, low-level crime. Okay, well, yeah, explain that. I didn't say get rid of prostitution, but let's decriminalize it. Let's empty Rikers Island. Let's keep staffing the way it is. Now, follow that. So if we lose, we could lose almost 4,000 cops in January. So are you saying you'll go down to 30,000 cops, but your community action teams will replace some of those services? That sounds great, but let's see it in action. So your rhetoric is your rhetoric, and the one backbreaker will be the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
Why? Because that sounds good to a lot of people. Get the communities involved.
Right, so you make a complaint against a cop. You have these young investigators that do not like the police department to begin with, okay? But the final adjudication lies with the police commissioner now. If you put it in their hands, cops will not stay to jeopardize their job. Because the police commissioner says, well, you know, I know you want them terminated, but I see it differently. We'll render punishment this way. But if you leave it up to them, no cop over 20 years that remotely goes out in the street is going to take that chance with their pension, their family, and their lives. That will be a backbreaker. Now, he's on...
Wait, well, hold on. Because people will say, yeah, then don't do anything to get you brought in front of the Civilian Complaint Review Board, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right. Mistakes are the heart sometimes, easier said than done. If you want a police department that's going to be just purely reactive and not take a chance. Remember a couple years ago, the cop got the water poured on his head and stood there? You want to go back to that?
No.
Because public safety is the foundation of the city, and we can't go backwards. Now, we went through bail reform and all that crazy stuff. We kind of got it back. We're fighting. I don't know if we can come back a second time. We're already down cops. He does not want to hire more cops. You got to really listen real carefully what he says.
The brothers and sisters have had lots of politicians who they don't like and who are not good for them. Why is this any different?
Because his rhetoric in terms of he doesn't want to hire more cops, his rhetoric against us, we never had an elected official come in and say what he said about us. Now, he apologized. Okay, fine. But the CCRB thing, that is really scary for the rank and file, and people want to come on the job. And we're already having a retention problem. We did a good job recruiting this year. What's going to happen now? The cop's out of a contract. Do you think he's going to pay them a great contract? No. I don't think he is. But it remains to be seen. So it remains to be seen is the phrase here. So there's a storm brewing. Is it going to rain? Is it going to pour? Is it going to drizzle? We'll find out in January. Look, I made a phrase today. He wants to freeze rent for people. Okay, that sounds great. Not good for the landlord. But he's got to pay the rent come January 2nd. All these things he's promising, all these things he's backtracked on, okay, fine. But the rent is due January 2nd. Let's see what happens.
Do you wish you were still on the job for this period, or are you happy you're going to be watching it?
I'm happy I'm going to be sitting this one out. And I think I might be more influential outside than inside, if that makes sense. I could speak as a cop of 32 years. I've been in that locker room. I know how they feel. I could speak on it. But I'm going to be fair to him also. Because if he does well, right, I'm a New Yorker. If he does well, we do well. So let's root for him. Like I say, did a great campaign, great job. Went from 1% to 1 million voters. Now the people who voted for him, they're going to want their free stuff. I don't know what the line is. Is it March? Is it June?
They're going to want things, and the guys who are against him. I'm not talking about my brother, but the president of the United States. What I don't want to see is NYPD having to deal with federal agencies who are on the ground, putting them in compromised positions and animosity. That's what I'm worried about.
And if the message isn't clear on that, if that did happen, and there's no unity between the police commissioner, if his commissioner Tish or someone else, and City Hall, we're going to be in the middle, to your point. And it's going to be a disaster. And I think Eric Adams' legacy might be reshaped if things go wrong this time next year.
What did this mean last night for the people who are now so afraid of what it could mean? All right? That's why I invited Ben Shapiro. Thank you for being here. So, answer that first question. What did last night in New York City, because I don't think Spanberger and Sherrill mean the same thing to you, nor does Proposition 50 in California. What did New York City mayor's race mean?
Well, I mean, it looks like a revenge candidacy, frankly. And I think that what you're seeing here, and what I was listening to what you were saying earlier about the amount of nervousness on one part of the population, the amount of aggression from the other side of the population. I think that's very, very real. I mean, I've been receiving texts all day long from friends who live here, Republicans and Democrats, saying, do I need to leave the city because I'm so concerned about the tenor of Mamdani and what he's going to do next. that honestly, the best hope for Mamdani is that the city council stops him from doing the things that he wants to do. Because if he were actually able to implement many of his plans, it would make him more unpopular. But I think that, as you say, it was an outrage candidacy. I think that because everybody is now in the business of humoring people's outrage and then telling them that only if they are given outsized power will that outrage be alleviated in some way. Because of that, people are bouncing back and forth, because the truth is that most of the problems in people's lives in a free country like the United States are actually not solvable by government. Most problems in individuals' lives are mostly solvable by them. And there are obviously problems that need to be handled by inflation would be a problem that needs to be handled by the government. But when it comes to the idea that pretty much all the wrongs in your life can be solved by the government, which is something Mamdani literally said on the stage last night. He said there's no problem too big for government and no problem too small for government to care about it. That should be terrifying to anybody who has any familiarity with totalitarian systems.
Terrifying. My initial pushback before the Free Press's story today was going to be, socialism, you may not like it, you may like it, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't horrify you, it shouldn't frighten you as a human being the way giving an opening to Islamist tendencies, making certain talk okay. But then I saw them kind of converge in that Free Press story. I never connect socialists to anti-Semites. Like, that's never been a thing for me. But within this same playbook, they talk about the issue.
Well,
Is that new?
Well, I don't think it is. I think that the sort of coalition that's formed around it is new, meaning that the sort of radical racialist coalition that's been built up, is segmenting populations and by ethnicity, and then combining that with this socialist anti-capitalism movement. What that really is a grievance movement. It's a movement that says that there is a superstructure that has been holding you down. And Mamdani literally said this last night, and that you need to rise up and destroy that system. And that is terrifying because, as you say, the entire basis of a workable American politics is that if you work within the systems, then you will be able to effectuate change. And as we have actually given more and more power to governments, whether we're talking local governments or national governments, and those problems don't get solved, you have one of two solutions. One is to say maybe we should take the power away from the government and people should actually be left alone more. The other is to say, no, it's just the wrong people in charge and they need even more power in order to effectuate their will and fix all of your problems. And I think that right now it feels like a race to the bottom between a wide variety of characters, none of whom are saying the thing that no one wants to hear, which is government cannot actually solve all your problems. In many cases, government actually accentuates your problems. And what we really need is a culture of personal responsibility and a culture in which people actually make better decisions.
All right, speaking of better decisions, the Jews. 1 in 3.
This always goes well when
right?
The Jews.
You people.
Yeah.
The vote of 1 in 3 Jews for Mamdani. How do you explain that?
Well, I mean,
and by the way, over half of, almost half of his voters, period, said a big reason for their vote was his position on Israel.
Yes.
Which is weird in a New York City election period, even though, you do have a bigger population of Jews than you do anywhere else in the country, but it doesn't usually dominate our politics. But 1 in 3 Jews voting for Mamdani?
I mean, to really understand those sorts of polling numbers, you have to understand the breakdown inside the Jewish community. The Orthodox and conservative Jewish communities voted overwhelmingly for your brother. Overwhelmingly. It was really, unaffiliated Jews, people who go to synagogue relatively infrequently, who sort of enjoy social justice politics at their local Reform or Reconstructionist synagogue, who voted in favor of Mamdani. And I think one of the things that when we talk about Jews as an ethnicity versus, say, as a religious community, it's easy to obscure who exactly is voting for what. If you're talking about an atheist who happens to be ethnically Jewish voting for Zohran Mamdani, that shouldn't be a particular shock. I'd be a little more shocked if people like me who wear yarmulkes started showing up en masse and voting for Zohran Mamdani, but I can guarantee you that probably 99.8% of that population went for your brother.
That's an interesting distinction. I appreciate that. I didn't see it that way. It's actually comforting. But the last point is, Ben, don't take this so seriously. They were demonizing this guy. You see how he's smiling all the time. It's just talk. Globalize the Intifada. He says it means different things to different people. He's got to be respectful of his own background, but he's not one of those guys. He's not the Brotherhood.
I mean, very difficult for me to believe that when he was literally asked on national television whether Hamas should disarm, a position currently held, by the way, not just by the Israelis, by the American government, the Egyptian government, the Saudi government, the UAE government, the government of Bahrain, and the government of Qatar, by the way. And he refused to answer that question. That was the sole question about the Middle East, apparently, about which he holds no opinion whatsoever. But he does have an opinion about arresting the sitting prime minister of the state of Israel, who, like him or hate him, he has no right to actually arrest on American soil. Mamdani is, I think, driven by this particular issue. It's why he got into politics in the first place. As a college member of Students for Justice in Palestine, it has been an animating issue for him forever. I would be shocked if it doesn't remain a core issue for him moving forward. And obviously, if you're Jewish living in the city and you're already worried about elevated rates of crime against you, which has been happening now for several years, I think that, let's put it this way, every Jew that I know in the city of New York feels significantly less safe today under a Mamdani administration than they do under Eric Adams or they would have under your brother.
But where are they safe? Because on the left fringe, you've got what we're seeing in New York City. On the right fringe, you got your former brothers there, and sisters, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson, that are rabidly anti-Semitic. What is going on here?
So, I mean, I think that one thing that ought to be noted here is that Mamdani was just elected mayor of New York. The people who you're talking about, who I'm speaking out very, very loudly against right now, that they actually do not have a foothold in elected office. There may be a couple of members of Congress who I think are sort of aligned with them, but the idea of a major national politician who's mirroring that agenda, that seems really outsized. Right now, President Trump obviously not anti-Semitic. I think the vice president is anti-Semitic. I don't think that the Speaker of the House who spoke out against Tucker Carlson and the Senate Majority Leader, both of whom spoke out against this, are anti-Semitic or even want to be associated with that kind of content. You're talking about commentators. You're not talking about elected officials. And so while I am deeply concerned about this, very, very concerned, so much so that I spoke out extensively about it this week and will continue to do so, I think that that's still a step removed from where the Democratic Party is, where it's become part and parcel of a large part of the progressive base elevating somebody like Zohran Mamdani. That was a feature, not a bug of his campaign. I think everyone outside of New York watching that race saw Mamdani say these insane things about the Middle East, about Israel, and they thought, how can he win in spite of that? And they missed the point that he won.
Especially here.
And they missed the point that he won because of that. I think one of the other perceptions that people miss is the fact that New York City is just as Muslim as it is Jewish. Right, 11% of the population here is Muslim, 11% of the population here is Jewish. And so the idea that he won, the Jewish city, I mean, again, then it's the Muslim city too.
And will become increasingly so. Ben Shapiro, appreciate you being here. You're always welcome to have the conversation. I would just say this, though. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to somebody who's known from the digital realm, just like these other commentators. You guys have a lot of power.
I'm not downplaying it.
That's all I'm saying.
Fighting it.
All right. Thank you very much.
In a night with Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio. Good to see you, sir. Vivek Ramaswamy running for governor in Ohio. He says affordability is the #1 issue.
No, I think it is an important issue, and where we are now compared to where we were under President Biden with the record inflation we had there, do we want it to get better? Of course, and President Trump's working on that. That's why we cut taxes. That was part of the big, beautiful bill. I think those things will have a real impact as we move, as we get a little further down the road. But compared to where we were under President Biden, certainly an improvement, certainly better off. Whether you look at the markets, whether you look at the interest rates, whatever you look at compared to where we were in the previous presidency, things are better. But I do think
are Republicans being respectful enough of how the American people feel? Joe Biden was not, objectively. Are Republicans being respectful enough that Americans still are feeling an enormous amount of pain, especially the working class Americans that put Trump and Republicans in control of the House, the Senate, and the White House?
Yes, that's why we want the government open. We didn't close the government. They did. Every Republican in the House voted to keep the government open. 14 times in 36 days, they've tried to have the Democrats in the Senate vote with the Republicans in the Senate to keep the government open. So, yes, we care about where the American people are. But I do think it's a little difficult and maybe not just accurate to compare a national election 1 year ago with a 3-state, 1 big blue city election yesterday, and somehow say that they're equivalent. They're not. The whole nation voted, red and blue states, not just 3 blue states and 1 really blue city, and extrapolate from there. So I think that's just not a false, I think that's just a false comparison.
Well, I think maybe you didn't hear the monologue, but I made that point, exactly that point.
No, that's exactly what I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I heard. You talked about the interpretation Democrats took from the election in 24, which was a national election, every member of Congress, a third of the Senate, and the presidency, and compared that to what you said Republicans are interpreting a 3 blue state, 1 really blue city election. That's a different animal. Those are 2 different things.
No, they are, sir, but I'm hearing a lot of Republicans who are interpreting this election, especially a lot of Jewish Republicans, who are terrified of what's happened in New York City.
Well, Well, we
So-
should be, because a socialist won the mayor's position in our largest city, a socialist who says they want government-run stores. You talk about affordability, you talk about shortages and rationing. That's what happens when you have government-run groceries, for goodness sake.
Okay, well, I think we may be talking past each other in that sense, but you're saying, I think, conflating that caring about how the government gets reopened with Americans feeling like Republicans understand the pain they are experiencing. Noteworthy that Congress still gets paid and the shutdown federal workers do not. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene today with Blake Berman on the Hill. Take a listen.
It was about America first. It was about MAHA, and it was about cost of living and putting Americans' issues above everything else. And that has not been the focus for months now.
Does she have a point?
I think Marjorie is on point in many ways. But I also think the election was about securing the border, which we've done. That was front and center in this election. I think this election was about common sense. You know, this idea that somehow the left, who thinks, you know,
are
men
you talking about the
can participate
2024
in women's
election or
sports and
last
somehow
night?
that's fair. I'm talking about 2024. I'm talking about, because Marjorie's talking about what we have done this Congress. So I think we've been doing exactly what we said. Certainly the president has. The president said he was going to cut taxes. He did. He said he was going to secure the border. He did. We've all been helping with that. He said he was going to make sure men aren't competing in women's sports. He did. He said he was going to make sure Iran didn't get nuclear capability. He stopped that as well. So the president's been doing what he said. That's what we campaigned on. So I do think we're doing that. But to then say somehow yesterday impacts, I just don't get the direct comparison from what we were elected to do. Now, we are elected a focus on affordability, and I think we've done that with the things we put in the big, beautiful bill. And as I said, you're the one who talked about food stamps and affordability. The Democrats are the one who shut down the government and are jeopardizing the food stamps that you referenced.
Hey, welcome back. Well, this morning, some investors are asking if New York City's mayor-elect is going to tank their profits. Some Wall Street heavy hitters spending millions to try defeating Democratic Socialist Zohran Mamdani, and now face navigating global perception of the city's businesses, their friendliness, all while dealing with a shutdown-induced data blackout. NewsNation's Alicia Nieves, she's in Manhattan with the details. So, Alicia, you know, this mayor, or mayor-elect, I should say, already being treated like the boogeyman.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, that's been the case during the campaign, and Wall Street is having to come to the reality and accept the fact that Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of New York City. This, of course, after, you know, billionaires like Bill Ackman, even former New York City Mayor Mike Bloomberg spent millions of dollars while Zohran Mamdani was campaigning to campaign against him, and in hopes of getting him, you know, not to be the next mayor. You know, they're having to deal with the reality that that's the case now. Zohran Mamdani, even at one point on the campaign trail, joked that the amount of money they were spending against him was more than he was actually going to tax them. So, you know, when you look at what Wall Street has been a bit concerned about, it's a few things. Higher taxes is one of them, you know, especially for higher income earners like hedge fund managers, rent freezes that could squeeze Manhattan's lucrative real estate profits, and then pushes for more city-run services like grocery stores over private contracts that benefit big businesses. But again, with little choice here, Wall Street is now striking this more kind of accepting tone 24 hours after the election results. Bill Ackman even opening appear to kind of extend an olive branch, posting on X, "Congrats on the win. Now you have a big responsibility. If I can help NYC, just let me know." BlackRock co-founder Ralph Schulstein also opposing Mamdani, but now saying that he's exploring ways to work with the new administration, including joining a business advisory group. And listen, economists, if you talk to most, they're saying this outreach is strategic, but it's also, you know, something that the mayor-elect should lean into.
If New York City becomes less welcoming to Wall Street, which is the economic gem of the whole city, they're less likely to stay. I mean, they don't really need to fight to stay in New York. That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the interesting point here, right? You know, in this digital era, trading and investing really can happen anywhere. Investors, you know, like the prestige of Wall Street and New York City, but profits matter most. And so it's really going to be a strategic move for Wall Street to work with the mayor-elect and vice versa, Kelly.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.